Hello, I'm Regina Ivana Gomez, and today I'm going to be doing my public lecture review, and it's gonna be on the professor debate on the topic, do we live in a simulation? So for this talk, it was between the School of Physics and the Society of Physics Students, and they hosted a public debate between the faculty from the College of Science and the College of Computing to answer this question. This debate covered a lot of angles, such as the physics aspect, whether the question is meaningful or not, and the possible societal ramifications of living in a simulation. The speakers at the beginning introduced themselves and their stances on the issue, whether they believe they are in a simulation or not. With some saying it's impossible to prove either way, and others believing that we do live in a simulation. And this debate also explores different angles, but ultimately, uh, they say that there is no empirical way to say whether or not we live in a simulation. Some specifically interesting things that I enjoyed of this lecture is some of the comparisons that they made with pop culture, such as understanding how this connects with the Matrix and some points that might be a little bit more realistic rather than science fictional in it. And another thing that I also enjoyed was how they also talked about philosophy and some philosophers and how the statements that certain philosophers have said also do connect with how we think of things algorithmically, and how even though it's philosophy, it's also a base towards some algorithms that we've developed now. One of the main conclusions in the debate was that that question as a whole, are we in a simulation, is a little too vague because a simulation can be interpreted in many ways. So one of the speakers says that the world around us and our perceptions of it can be considered a simulation, while others interpret a simulation more of a being in a hacker type of stimulated algorithmically simulation. And some other points of interest towards the end was that given still that an actual simulation as we perceive it in a sci-fi movie was given, would you turn in that simulation if you know that a specific simulation caused a lot of pain for the people within that simulation? And one speaker says that they wouldn't because the that all that suffering wouldn't really lead to any significant knowledge, while another speaker says that they would turn it on because in a way that means that not turning it on would also like extend a little bit of the human species, and us as a human species we are worth preserving. So I thought that was very interesting, and some of the other conclusions can also be that our brain already interprets a stimuli in different ways based on our individual perceptions. So technically, we are all living different realities, which could also be interpreted as a different simulation. Now, to answer some final questions, what did I learn that I already knew? Well, there at some points there were some moments where they spoke about the factibility and of the existence of a machine that could actually run this level of simulation. Those were some concepts that I had already explored, but it was really interesting to hear it talked about by these professors. And now that's just a concept that I was already familiar with. And what did you learn that you didn't know? Well, I thought it was really interesting. I come from a CS background, but I do not come from a biology background. I don't know anything about how the body works really. So at some point, there was a professor that talked about the physical and chemical changes in our memory that our brain makes and how that can relate to a simulation and how it like can alter our memories, and just the biology physical changes in the brain in terms of proteins, and how this happens every time we recall a memory. So I thought that was really interesting because I didn't know anything about it. I had never even heard about it. So I thought that was extremely interesting to learn. Overall, I thought this debate was extremely interesting. I think it was a question that I had definitely already talked about with friends before, but I think it was especially interesting because I had never seen this question approached from different fields such as physics or biology, philosophy, CS. So hearing all these thoughts from different fields was very eye opening, and I will for sure be bringing up these debate points whenever this question pops again in a different setting.